Happy holidays. Merry Christmas from Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst, The Deep End, powered by Draft Sharks. Does it feel like your season is over or is it just beginning? 80-20 over for me, maybe even 81-19. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Best ball bloodbath this week. But I'll find out if I'm the only one. It was the kind of day where I'm just reevaluating everything. Like, why am I doing this? How am I doing it wrong? The guy I call in those kind of crisis moments is Adam. So convenient that we're here together. We'll talk some strategy for the last 2 weeks of the season, all the quarterback injuries, and for anybody transitioning to playoff stuff, Adam's got some strategy that I'll, rip apart when it comes to the Underdog fantasy streets or postseason playoff streets and FFPC as well. Anyway, it'll be a fantasy football show with us, Mike and Adam. Thanks for watching, and welcome to The Deep End. How about you? How much are you on this week and next week versus next year right now, or the playoffs even?
Oh man. Well, I've got this 5K entry fee over at the FFPC that has me still on this season. So
yeah.
That, I've got a bunch of other stuff, but it's like that, this is obvious. This is the thing that's carrying me. Not squeaked in, but I got into the 2-week race now for the final 2 weeks. So that the top prize there is $25K. So I'm in the top 4, start from scratch. So that's got me kind of fired up and still, living in this year. But Other than that, I'm kind of on the playoff challenges and stuff, which I'm starting to get amped up about. But, we've talked a bunch this year. I've been kind of onto next season strategy, since week 10, because it's just been that type of year. But, and then talking to you and listening to you, what's what's worse, what's better, to just die in the regular season or get all these teams in and then get swept in the first round of the playoffs. It's pretty brutal. Pretty brutal.
What kind of shape is your 5K team in? I know you have T. Higgins, right?
Yeah, that's a Travis Kelce, T. Higgins, Godwin, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson. It's a 0 RB build. And it's the Washington Commanders backfield, who have been starting every week. So it's Gibson, it's Robinson, it's Gibson and Robinson. And so I've just been getting, 25 a week out of them combined generally when there's no, when there's receivers lined up on the line of scrimmage for the last play of the game, I generally would get that touchdown and get that 25 points. But we got enough to get through. I was just looking back at that team too. It's fun when you get to the end, you start to look back. I drafted Justin Fields on that stinking team and cut him week 2 or 3. And it might come back to bite me because now I'm a Daniel Jones, Jared Goff streamer. So that's kind of where that is. But it's exciting. The teams I'm looking at, one of them's got Hurts that's in the top 4 here. There's a lot of injuries. I think I got a real shot at it.
Well, that's exciting. That's going to keep you going to the end, at least this week, if not next week too. And I've got the little thing called the Draft Sharks Invitational that has my attention.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Best ball has been, I don't want to call it a disaster, but a really frustrating end to almost every team I have in any kind of best ball tournaments. Not literally everyone, but 1 or 2 that made it somehow. And then there's this guy.
This guy right here.
This is going to be wild.
Yes, this is the Draft Sharks Invitational overall leaderboard for those of you who don't watch and listen. Mike Shope there at the top, 2,519.6, ahead of John Scuderi, 2,518.8. This is going to be a heartbreaker for somebody down the stretch here. And then Leone at 2,427. So he's quite a bit behind you guys. I think it's a 2-team race here for the overall prize, which is $5,000, compliments of draftsharks.com. And Lenny Papano for free entry, for free roll for 5K. And then each league winner gets $500, I think. So,
you can ask me if you want, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Although you invented the tournament.
Sure. I mean, I went to the tournament. Draft Sharks ponied up the money, and like I've said before, this is the toughest single entry tournament in the world. Handpicked analysts, handpicked players, like the best of the best. Chad Schroeder. The kind of the goat of fantasy football. Everyone kind of says that, and they're right. He won it last year, and so
You were second?
I was second. Yeah, that's right. We don't want, listen, the deep end doesn't want back-to-back seconds. Do what I couldn't do. Okay.
No.
But
We'll get a reputation.
that's right. That's right. So yeah, what are you thinking? I know you've been studying these rosters pretty in depth. What's the difference going to be here?
Well, I have Jalen Hurts.
Oh,
but he's why I'm in first.
sure.
I started Hurts Kelsey in that draft, and I don't know if I even did anything that well after that, but those have been the two best guys, arguably, in fantasy football to have. And it's a tight end premium and super flex. So, that worked out. I was at the 12 at the turn in the first one of these drafts. But best ball, where does best ball come from? Maybe from golf. We have best ball in golf. I had a friend, Pete, who, when I was playing a lot of golf, he and I won a club championship. Beef light, I have to tell you, but still, we won a best ball tournament. And hey, Julius. And then, if you're in best ball, one guy makes a birdie or a par, the other guy can make an 8 or a 9, and then you flip the script the next hole. And so in best ball, you're not both shooting in the 70s. It's zigging and zagging. And so I lose Jalen Hurts, but I get Pickett back.
There you go.
Yeah. And Pickett is not Jalen Hurts, but if he puts up 20 against the Raiders, that's going to be playable. Hurts was often in the 30s, if not higher. So it's different. John and I both have Nick Chubb and Dallas Goedert. But
okay,
he drafted Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson to go with Chubb because he thought, well, at least one of these guys is getting moved.
Yeah.
And now Chubb is not practicing and they're almost dead.
Yeah.
So if Chubb misses, that's advantage him because he'll get a game out of Hunt or Johnson or both, maybe at least.
Yeah.
I've been very thin at wide receiver almost all year. I've got a few guys that are down, but got Romeo Doubs back. Curtis Samuel's still breathing. We'll see about Cooks, Godwin. I lost Lockett. And, so that's most of it. It's going to be close. We each think the other person will win.
You guys are so humble. It's
that's not it. That's not it.
It's so humble. Listen, Curtis Samuel could be a guy. He's been a thorn in the side of Antonio Gibson owners, right? The guy gets 5 carries on Monday night. Like, what the heck? So, he might get going there. But it's so funny, these best ball tournaments, man. It comes down to the littlest. It comes down to timing of injuries, and a lot of it is just the timing of injuries, right? Like if it comes when you're getting another guy back or whatever, like it's wild how that stuff happens.
There's so much luck.
Yeah.
And in terms of FFPC or Underdog or these other best ball events, man, I don't know. Like my first time really going hard. I mean, Underdog is still a relatively new operation. And so Best Ball Mania and these massive tournaments, I loved it, and that was really where the addiction of these drafts kicked in, was like late at night, Underdog, $25, like a number I can just sort of feel like it's not real money until you do 70 of them. And then that's real money. Then you get to week 16 and you don't have anybody playing. Like I had 14 teams get through to week 15 and nobody finished above 4th. And I don't know, this is right, isn't it? I know you did the show with Matt on Draft Sharks yesterday, and I heard you talking about this kind of thing a lot, but was this not an unusually cruel week for players most people never drafted to get in the end zone, even like 2 or 3 times? I mean, I thought I had some good ideas of teams anyway, but it's still 1 out of 12. I mean, it's still tough to win.
Yeah, it's so hard. And that's right. Matt has been talking, Matt Schauf from Draft Sharks has been talking. We talked a lot in the podcast, and he's been talking a bunch on Twitter this week. And he's always stood by, like, he likes these season-long tournaments where they don't have, a weekly kind of elimination every week, kind of a luck of the draw type deal. Even if you get like a regular season, and then, all right, we're all in the postseason now, let's do a 3-week race instead of a weekly step. But that's what Underdog is. And And yeah, so there's just so much. So I'm trying to find the fantasy points for this week here. There's just so much, luck, especially that happened this week. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about guys that you and I were texting earlier. I'm like, yeah, I got through on some Zay Jones teams that I know I didn't draft Zay Jones. Why would you? And so I'm like, he was a last round pick that I timed out, or I fell asleep at 1 a.m. doing one of these late night drafts, and Zay Jones ended up on my team, and somehow I end up through. It's like that's all you needed was stuff like that. And it's just, I mean, you think of this week: Zay Jones, KJ Osborne, Russell Gage, Noah Brown, Jahan Dotson, Rashid Shaheen, like all these guys that are just like Shaheen probably isn't on any roster. I don't, maybe it's, people were drafting for months and months and months, but I mean, yeah, you got all these teams like Cooper Kupp teams dead, all these, me Stephon Diggs, teams I have, or those high receivers we were taking, Devontae Adams teams. I have Diggs Adams teams combo dead because some guys got Zay Jones and KJ Osborne. Like, okay, I guess none of it matters. Just, cross your fingers for round 16 picks.
Well, you can't, a couple things, because I do think it's important to ask the question, like, should we have been drafting Zay Jones, for example? Like, Diggs and Adams both kind of dudded in 15, and you'll never be able to control that. And that sort of thinking will never help you because you'll never know when that's going to happen. They still had great seasons too. Like they helped get you in. So I'm not going to avoid guys ever on the basis of, well, what happens in week 15, or even like what the matchup is. If there's some reason to think some matchup is really terrible, I mean, I don't know. It can't work like that. But how you beat it is, this isn't great. I heard Matt talking about this too. Like the volume player has the edge, as is always the case in DFS or in this, or in, a lot of this kind of thing, where the more kicks at it you get, the better chance you have of having like the perfect team. And so that's a little bit demoralizing, right? Because most of us can't just put all of our money and resources into drafting constantly. There's a limit. There's a kind of a strict limit for most people on that. So you try to overcome it by doing as many as you can. You're sort of feeding into the whole machine, because that's just more teams and more money and more volume and, a $2 million prize to first place. That's not bad. If Matt or somebody wants best ball tournaments, I mean, they're going to be out there. The thing is expanding pretty fast. That don't have playoff weeks, or don't have the escalation. I think to a reasonable extent, that's going to be something you can find, but I don't really know. I mean, this is where most of the buzz of the offseason was in terms of Underdog and FFPC stuff, like just really the huge prize pool at the end. Zay Jones, like, I think already, I have to analyze it, but it felt like there probably was an argument for him, and there was an argument for McKinnon, and some of these guys that were on fewer teams. And that's one thing. If I were to do the same amount of teams next year, which again, like yesterday was a day where I'm telling myself, no way. Do I want to do that? Because it was just so tough to advance. If I were to do the same number of teams, though, I'd want to have more different players, not just like among the players I was drafting in those late rounds. Paris Campbell is somebody who I was drafting a lot in late rounds, or Curtis Samuel, Khalil Herbert, guys like that. Not just having, breaking that up, but including more players that I wasn't drafting at all. And that would be Zay Jones. It could have been McKinnon. And what those guys are, and maybe this is Noah Brown too, a little bit, and maybe Osborne, they're all different, but they're all kind of like boring veterans. Because for much of the offseason, and the argument then turns to, when is it right to be, starting to draft? Do you want to wait or not? Well, there could be an edge in drafting earlier, but you're drafting rookies. I think it's popular to draft rookies in those rounds because, maybe there'll be a home run. Maybe there'll be James Robinson of 2 years ago, or a player like that. And you kind of know, or you think what the ceiling is on Zay Jones. But really, you go round and round. Like, that doesn't have to be right. And then also, really, like, Zay Jones had 2 touchdowns before 2 days ago?
Yes.
So what how much time do you really want to spend not beating yourself up, but reading and re-examining your process? For the most part, I think it's fine. It just happens this way, but that's a tough thought to go to bed, to go to sleep to. It's like, I put $2,000 or $3,000 into best ball, and whatever. It was fun to draft, but I lost. It is a big deal. It is a big deal, and I think you want to keep the effort going to try to figure out how to get it right.
Yeah, and I think you nailed a bunch of things there. One of them was how I've been thinking this through is, hey, how do we, like at the ends of the drafts, maybe incorporating more players into our tiers, like, because at the end of the day, we don't know what everyone's going to do, with the first round picks, let alone the late round flyers. So add more Zay Joneses, add more, KJ Osborne. Now, I had a ton of KJ Osborne this year. I thought three wide receiver sets. They're gonna be doing that more with the new offensive coordinator coming in, all this other stuff. Well, it didn't pan out, but hey, he happened to be on a couple teams that were still alive and got me through. So, it's just maybe adding, like you're saying, adding more players to our late round flyers and not having the same 4 or 5 guys. Maybe we expand that to 9 or 10 guys, knowing that there's a shot at getting that through, and maybe not focusing so much too on, and we'll see how it plays out, but on like everyone was targeting this, a lot of the same stacks at the end, Bills, Bengals, like all these different things. It's like all it takes is a snowstorm to ruin it, to ruin an entire thing. Look at the games this weekend. We're looking at 3 or 4 games with sub-zero temperatures. They're talking about like high flight, the Chiefs, the Bills, like, Bills versus Bears. Oh, we've been waiting for this matchup all year. Like, well, look at it now. Now it's 3 straight weeks of bad weather. Guys like Stephon Diggs who've been zeros. Guys that got you there. So, maybe not worrying so much about stacking these certain games and maybe focus more on, outcomes of the 3rd or 4th or 5th receiver on a team if things break right. So yeah, but then like you said, the overall strategy of like, spend $2,000-$3,000 on Underdog and to have it all kind of go away on the first in one round, like you said, one team gets through, right? Was it one team in Best Ball Mania? Is that what it was? Yeah. I mean, even if you have a good showing, like I had 3 super flex best ball tournament teams in the FFPC that were really good get through to last week. And I had great weeks. Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Osborne. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be great. And I look, second place, I think 2 teams get through. A third place, a third place, a fourth. It's like sometimes you're good, but you're just not good enough. And that's just bad luck. You don't really necessarily need to change your habits or your strategy, your thought process. You just gotta cross your fingers and hope you're Go Bills, Marv Levy, and just run hot every time the playoffs roll around. Come on.
Well, another hat tip to those guys is they lead the main event. Last year's main event champions, Nick, Dom, and Sean, are leading this year. And I talked to Nick a little bit about his decision to bench Zonovan Knight for Zay Jones and McKinnon. And really, it was simply the ownership percentage.
Yep.
That all the Zonovan Knight teams were teams that picked him up late, and then he did well. So he projected pretty well. And Nick said, they're playing Detroit. Detroit's been good, and we're behind. So you play the alternate move. And those guys were just, especially Jones, were just not in lineups very often. So they shot right to the top of the leaderboard, and I hope they win. I hope they win again. It'd be awesome. What a story.
That would be awesome. And stuff like that too, that people don't like in a vacuum. I looked at that because I was texting with Nick too. And in a vacuum, you look at that and it's like, man, I never would have started Zay Jones over Zonovan. But then I'm like, how did they get there? You like to think like, how did they, you want to study the good players and so like, how did they get there? Well, that's exactly how they got there. It's the player ownership, and you're behind. So you really want to play low owned guys. And we'll get into a lot of that in the playoff tournaments and stuff. You're going to do a lot of that thought process, right? Like, hey, I want low owned players. It's like a DFS type thought. So they made the pick, and there he goes, straight to the moon.
Remember in Dynasty, like week 5, we were offered Zay Jones for Chase Edmonds, and we laughed it out of the room.
I don't remember that, but thanks for bringing it
Yeah.
up.
We got a trade offer. The guy offered Zay Jones for Chase Edmonds, who was doing all right for Miami. You're like, why would we do this? Like, who says yes to this offer?
Right. Who even
So
sends that offer? Right.
who
right.
even sends that offer? So we rejected it swiftly. And oh my gosh, right now, last week, I mean, I had a lot of really smart looking Chase Edmonds picks
That's
over the
right.
course of the summer. He's not even
right.
barely in the league anymore. All right. So one aspect of these injuries and the damage it's done to fantasy is the quarterback injuries. I want to bring up one question here. So going into the main event, sprint, or the football guys, I mean, I have one football guys team that qualified with Kyler Murray and Mike White, another one with Murray and Pickett. Just different combinations of guys. The Murray injury timing was so cruel, just like one day after waivers closed. Then you had, Hurts now. A lot of teams are going to be stuck at quarterback here. Adam, should we have rostered 3?
For tournament play?
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, it's just, again, you got to kind of roll the dice on, but what's interesting too, though, is I've seen a lot of, and I'm not judging anyone, especially this year with the amount of injuries and the timing of injuries and all that type of stuff. But I wasn't comfortable going into tournament play with like Mike White as my number 2, or guys that are on the fringe of like, there was talk about Zach Wilson getting the job back anyways, because they want to see what he's got, whatever. So there were chances, like even the guys like Mac Jones is my number 2, like, he could lose his job, stuff like that. Kind of all those guys, the Davis Mills, the Matt Ryans, guys that could just lose their job to another guy to see what this quarterback has. Those were scary number 2 quarterbacks, unless you had like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or something where you weren't going to use them regardless. They were just kind of there for injury insurance. But still, here we go. Now you got an injury to Jalen Hurts. Now you got an injury to Jalen Hurts, and you got backup quarterbacks in tournaments where they might lose their job or stuff like that. So generally, I wouldn't carry 2. I wouldn't carry 3 unless you really had to carry, a guy like Tyler Heineke. And then like, oh, well, he might lose his job too. And Wentz comes back. So, and then you carry a 3rd, but it's still, the only way I would do that is if it was a last second decision heading into the final week where I had a guy go on the IR. I'm like, well, I have a free spot to play with. Yeah. I'll pick up this safety net. But other than that, I'm not dropping like any active player to pick up a third QB.
It's a while ago, but Matthew Stafford went out. Lamar Jackson is out. Russell Wilson has been out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still Jimmy Garoppolo is out. It's a lot of quarterbacks. Do you have 2 kickers on every tournament roster?
Absolutely. Yep. I can't stomach it. I can't stomach the thought of having a kicker go down. Now, Abib Agbatoba, Dr. Abib Agbatoba won the football guys a couple of years ago without a kicker his final week. I can't stomach it. So yeah, I carry 2. I love what the FFWC does. They've got team kicker. I'm a huge team kicker. We had Alex, the owner of the FFPC, on last spring, and he talked about why he doesn't like team kicker. Fine. So I definitely carry 2 kickers.
It's a lot more points on the line at quarterback, and this year at least the injury rate has been much different. There have been kicker injuries last year and this year. I mean, I remember from the bare knuckle and from best ball, like guys would be out for the year before even training camp started a couple times. You were just stuck there when that happened. But the quarterback carnage has been pretty severe here of late.
Wild.
All right. So what else you got?
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of Jalen Hurts, I mean, so we got some leagues that are still, you're able to pick up, like even in like the high stakes non-tournament leagues, you can still use waivers. So I've got I mean, I don't have an interesting situation, but one of the teams in my 5K that I'm competing with, has Jalen Hurts and no number 2. And so waivers are run through. Man, I wish I had more money to block him, but Minshew. I think he's got the most money, because I was about to go in there and block him and go pick up Minshew, but Hurts might still play. Would you forget the 5K, home leagues, playoffs and stuff like that? Would you pick up Minshew and be willing to start him this week?
Maybe. I always liked him once he started
Me too.
playing. For me, the right narrative on Minshew was this guy's a player, but his team has no investment in him, and they're going to lose and draft someone else. And that's what Jacksonville did. And that was who I thought of when Mills showed up this year. Like, he's maybe okay, but he's going to have to be so good for them to not want to draft somebody next year. And that was not really in the range of outcomes. So I like him all right. There's weapons. He liked to throw the ball. He was not conservative. And if Dallas can score, then maybe you see that. So maybe it's fine for AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert if he's back. I wouldn't hate it. Would I start him over Tua? No. Would I start him over Watson? Even no. But you could do worse. I mean, these Trace McSorley, Brett Rippon kind of teams, I definitely want to have Minshew instead of those guys.
Yeah, Minshew reminds me a lot of the Brock Purdy's, the Tyler Heineke's. Like they're these scrappy quarterbacks that can flash for a week or two or three. And he's already done that 2 or 3 times. He's had 2 or 3 different flashes. So he can kind of show you what he's got. He's got the weapons around him. Teams love him. The players tend to love him. So yeah, I think Gardner Minshew is definitely startable. I mean, Draft Sharks has him ranked 17th over at draftsharks.com, but he's right around, like you said, just Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Pickett. I would definitely start him over Pickett. And so, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I think he's worth adding, especially if you have Jalen Hurts. And I also think he's worth blocking because he could have a big game or a big enough game where you would rather have to have that team go down and get a guy like Baker Mayfield or Desmond Ridder. I think the difference there is big enough where you would want to go block a guy like Gardner Minshew, but don't cut Jalen Hurts if you have him because he still might play this week.
Right.
So we're kind of going to wait and see on that. But a tough break for the Hurts owners if he can't go this week.
Yeah, the line did move a little bit back toward Philadelphia today to 4.5. So 4.5 and 46, which would be 25.75 to 21.25. 21 is not a great implied total for the Eagles, but they're the Eagles. Sanders could hit. Who knows in that game? I think probably the fear is, and this is related to Hurts, is that the Eagles don't really need the game, but it's a little bit risky. Dallas is close enough behind them, and it's New Orleans at home next week. I don't know. Like the Eagles are probably fine. Lots of different ways this can go, as ever.
Yeah, so, I haven't heard either. Sorry to interrupt. I haven't heard either. Is that it's a shoulder injury, but is it like if he plays, can he make it worse?
It's a shoulder strain. Reportedly, there were different rumors. There was different speculation at first. Collarbone was one thing.
Yeah.
I think I heard left shoulder, which reminds me of Mayfield last year. Who was it this year that injured their left shoulder and stayed in, or what happened with that? I'll think of it. So, I don't know. I mean, Of course, they're a team that is all about the postseason, so they shouldn't be taking any big chances.
Right.
Adam, who am I thinking of here? Guy like a left shoulder injury, a quarterback. And the comparisons were to last year's Mayfield. Maybe it's Justin Fields.
Is it Fields? I was going to say Fields. Yeah, Fields.
Yeah, and he missed what?
A game?
One game? Did he miss a game?
I think. Yep. One game, and then they thought he would miss another one because the bye week I thought was coming up after that, and they ended up playing him anyways. But
who played for Chicago? Who's his backup?
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe was that Peterman? Is Peterman the backup? Peterman didn't.
It was the game against the Jets with Peterman and Simeon. Was it?
Okay. God.
Was it Simeon, or who was the guy? He was hurt in the warm-ups. He wasn't going to play, and then he ended up playing, and then he went on IR. Was that Trevor Simeon? I was at a water park in Canada, so I
can't remember. I'll think of it.
Remember that morning, though? Like Peterman was going to play, and then...
That's right. Peterman was going to play, and then the backup actually played. But the backup's... I don't think it's Simeon.
You don't?
I'm going to look it up. I'm looking it up right now.
Look it up.
Because I barely want to start Justin Fields in this attack, and yet somehow we're starting to just Trevor Simeon. Tim Boyle. Does that sound right?
No.
Okay, well they must have just added Tim Boyle because he's there right now.
I got it. Simeon is right.
Okay, go Trevor Simeon.
Okay.
All right, underdog playoff thoughts. Trevor Simeon is not in my underdog playoff thoughts. So we're gonna have a bunch of podcasts in the next couple weeks, maybe the next month or so, month and a half, about the playoff challenges, the different types, the ones over FFPC, FFWC, Underdog, and so just getting you can start doing them now over on Underdog, which is insane, and I love it. And so my juices start to get flowing and thinking about like strategies from last year and strategies that have worked. We will probably interview last year's winner, who I don't know who it is off the top of my head. Last year's FFPC winner we'll have on the show and talk to them about their strategy and how they won it last year. I know we had Austin Martin on the show before talking about, because he won it 3 years ago, and we had the next year's winner on it. And that the main theme that I've gotten from the winners is the kind of the big strategy is to pick the teams that you think are going to lose and kind of put them, don't pick any players from those teams, and then just load up on players from the teams that you think are going to win in advance. And hopefully you hit the right combination of players and win it all. Now it's harder with the underdog now because we don't know who's going to be in the playoffs yet. So a lot of stuff I've been doing is kind of focusing on that type of strategy and just trying to load up. I'll do like a Monday night or a Sunday night couple of drafts after like the kind of results from all the games come in, when the kind of the shifting of playoff pictures kind of adjust. And it's kind of been fun to, like a couple weeks ago, I did a bunch of Chargers stacks on Sunday night when they were starting to creep into the playoffs. Now they're the 6th seed, I think. And so I also had a bunch of Seahawks stacks after they won a couple weeks ago, and now they're currently out of the playoffs. But I think those are times when you can load up on teams where they're not currently in the playoffs. So maybe they're dropping down in ADP on Underdog, like the Seahawks now are not in. But I also love, because it's cheap enough, where you can go grab some Jaguar stacks now who are flying up the board, or some Lions stacks now that they're 7-7. They're on the bubble. So I don't know if you've done any of these yet, but what are your thoughts?
I think at Underdog, a key thing is that it's like the Best Ball Mania, where only one team will advance from week 1. So you can't necessarily just pick the Eagles or the Bills. I mean,
correct.
If you pick the Eagles and the Bills heavy, you're going to be out for sure.
Yes.
If they both get the 1 seed. So you have to be cognizant of that. I'm not judging either. But you'd want to find, when the Chargers are winning, I'd want to find the team that is getting bumped down, or as long as that wasn't a team that was higher last week, because the ownership the previous week would be heavily toward, like if that's Miami or the Jets or whoever that is.
Baltimore.
But, yeah. Baltimore, don't forget about. I mean, their playoff odds are still almost 100%. Like, they can't score, and it's kind of ugly, and there's speculation about Jackson, but they're still like highly likely to make it. And they have Atlanta at home this week. They can't lose that game, but still, like, Baltimore is almost definitely going to be in. So, after that, once you understand like the 1 seed point and the playoff odds, I'd want to have the playoff odds, whether that's New York Times or just whatever, mechanism. Yep. Always make sure maybe there's a team, probably not when it comes to this tournament because everybody is so on it, but maybe there's a team that is sort of looked at as having better odds or worse odds than they really do. I think that would have been the Chargers. The Chargers and the Ravens both have, I think, much better playoff odds than maybe most fans realize.
Sure.
But I don't know that I'm right on that. And then, after you sort of factor in 1 seed probabilities and playoff probabilities, then after that, it's just like combos, different guys that makes sense, being willing to take a couple of long shots on the teams you're picking because why not?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting so far is like the Eagles. So when you're going into these things, you kind of have to like make up your mind. You have to like plant your flag on an idea or plant your flag on a thing where like, okay, the Eagles are going to be the 1 seed, right? Like we're just going to plant our flag there, or at least me. And that's, unless something crazy happens, unless Hurts doesn't play. And even then they'd have to like lose out essentially, I think. But so knowing that, okay, you're not going to have any Eagles in the first round of the Underdog playoffs, right? So, but the AFC is completely different. I mean, there could be 3 different 1 seeds depending on, I mean, you got the Bills now, but if the Bills lose, and the Chiefs stay where they are, the Chiefs can be the 1 seed. If the Bills lose to the Bengals, you know what I mean? The Bengals can move up into the 1 seed. There's a way that's not too far out of the realm of possibility. So the AFC is crazy because you got 3 high-powered, high-scoring offenses that any one of them you could lose. So, if you go in and say, okay, I'm going to stack the Eagle, I'm going to get a bunch of Eagles and a bunch of Bengals because I think the Bengals are going to make a run again. I think they're going to play week 1. And then all of a sudden the Bills lose to the Bengals and now the Bengals have a bye. That team's dead. Right. So it's just so many interesting, cool little things to do. And kind of the last thing here is I've been starting to draft a little bit more Christian McCaffrey in these because I think the Niners are going to be in a situation where they're peaking, which is crazy to think about, and they might get like Tampa, early like teams with losing records they might get in the first round that can move them into the next round. And I think they're a nobody wants to face the 49ers, I don't think. So they're a team that could be like the kind of the Bengals from last year, kind of like a team of destiny.
I like Miami for this. Miami's at Cincinnati, at Kansas City, some even maybe the Tennessee or Jacksonville winner, and they could be favored in that game, the way they can score. And it's easy names too. San Francisco. So San Francisco right now is the 3, and that's going to be like the Giants. The Giants are probably not getting to Dallas. I don't even know if it's possible, and they're going to be ahead of Washington or Detroit probably. They did lose to Detroit. I don't know. I think that's going to be San Francisco's game. Then you have Tampa is going to be home.
Correct.
To Dallas. Like that game has been kind of locked in for a while. If Tampa can hold on, if you want to have some real fun, start drafting New Orleans.
You mean if they can win the division? You're saying?
Yeah, I mean it's 6-8, 5-9, 5-9, 5-9. Tampa Bay actually has the worst point differential in the NFC South. Which what were those odds? What would those odds have been before the season that Tampa Bay would have the worst point differential in the NFC South? Just insane. With Brady starting every week.
Listen, just start drafting Jameis Winston and let's just go win. Let's go win a bunch of money. Come on.
The only pick as ever is Okonkwo. That's the only guy you need.
Chiggy
Okonkwo. He's going to win me that Draft Sharks Invitational. I'm telling you. He did count this week in the flex.
Good. Awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, people who listened to the show on last Thursday, we went with Taysom Hill at tight end in our dynasty league, and it worked out beautifully.
Yeah. We got away with that. That's going to be really close. The 4 teams in that 1K at FFWC are all really close in points through 1 week with 2 weeks left. So it's going to be Hill versus Hunter Henry this week. I put a couple bids in, by the way. You should check that out before you go back to Key Largo for the weekend or whatever it is you do for Christmas.
Let's go.
What's your favorite Christmas piece? Either the morning or the night before, just something about it that you're looking forward to the most.
Oh, definitely Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is like I believe it or not, I know my name is Adam Krautwurst, but I come from a very Italian family. I think you've met some of them. And so Christmas Eve is always a big thing in our Italian household, and we do a lot of that stuff the night before Christmas. So that's always kind of my favorite time of year. And now we have football, just added NFL football. They added into the mix, just sensational. So lots of great food, lots of family and football, and doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, here's to that. Christmas morning is always for my family and me at my sister's house, or one of my sister's houses. They alternate a little bit. We do a gift exchange, and I'll leave you with this. So there once was a tradition in our family that it was kind of a gag sort of gift theme for the Secret Santa. Everybody has one gift, put them in, and then you take turns picking the one you want, right? One of those. And I missed the memo where it went from the gag gift to like a nice gift. So I had a bunch right where I'm sitting behind the bar. I had a bag of like beer that nobody ever wanted to drink, like a Bud Light Orange and just this random
Whoa. What's wrong with
crappy
that?
beer.
What's wrong with the Bud Light Orange?
If only you had been in my family this day, you could have saved my reputation. So you just like all kinds of whatever beer. And then I have a friend who is the executive producer of The Bachelor. And one year on The Bachelor, they had a guy who would say "wah boom" all the time. So like that was a big joke. And he sent me a T-shirt that said "wah boom." Like, I'm throwing that in.
Yeah.
So I go, actually, the present I ended up with is right there. It's like a water, it's a speaker you plug in. It looks like a fountain, like a lava lamp almost, and it is a Bluetooth. That was my niece, like she was in college, and that was her contribution to the gift exchange, was this beautiful, Bluetooth speaker. Other people, it's like all kinds of, there's wine, or there's like a spa gift card, all kinds of fancy stuff. And nobody's picking mine because it's wrapped in the theme of a gag. Like it's wrapped just like tape, it intentionally looked terrible.
Yeah.
So by this time, I'm like, the presents are starting to be open. I'm just horrified.
You're panicked. Panic mode.
I'm just like, I know they're going to open mine and it's going to be embarrassing because I didn't play the game right. Like I just threw like beer that nobody wanted in a bag and put a Waboom T-shirt in there.
Uncle Mike, come on.
I know. So the moment arrived and the package was opened, and I was embarrassed, and everybody sort of ridiculed me for not caring enough to know what the rules of the gift exchange program were. And so that's haunted me for 5 or 6 years since then. But you'll be happy to know, I think I did actually put some effort into it this year, and I did buy a nice gift.
Cake bread, wine? Is that what we're talking about?
Not cake, not that good.
Okay.
Not as good as cake bread. Maybe get some cake bread back there.
There you go.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
All right. So did we help anybody? I don't know. Really, I'm ready to start trying to figure out what this was this year. I read a lot of people, and I know you were like this to some extent, just sort of struggling with this year and all the different challenges. But as recently as last week, I felt great.
Yeah.
After the main event, I put 3 football guys teams through. The RotoWire team's good. The FFWC teams are good, our dynasty team. And then the best ball wall.
Yeah.
Sunday. And now I just like, okay, did I really need to go that hard? Do I really need to do it this way?
Yeah.
Make some changes?
Yes,
always up for that kind of analysis.
Yeah, no, you definitely did. And you definitely, yeah, I mean, it plus more drafts makes you sharper. And yeah, you felt the way I felt going into the FFPC main event end of the regular season when I lost 4 teams that were in the playoffs on the final week that didn't get in. 2 fifth place teams, a team that missed by a point. Like I was,
wow.
It's like, wow. Oh my God, what do I do? Did I draft too much? It's just one of those years, and next year you'll come back and you'll move on in 16. I saw some guys moved on in 14 or 15. Like it's just how it is.
Wow. Or I'll just play something else.
Or that. Don't do that. Don't do that. No.
I don't know. I do love it. I still do love it. And this connection you and I have, and this show and the Draft Sharks people is a big part of it. So thank you, Adam. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you. And maybe someday I'll meet your wife.
Merry Christmas. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.